Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. Hey guys, welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I am so grateful that you're here today. I think that you're going to love my guest. I am talking with Katie Davis Majors, and you probably know Katie from her previous books, Kisses from Katie and Daring to Hope. She's the founder of a Mazama Ministry, which is an organization that provides the people in Uganda with food, education, scholarships, medical care, discipleship, and so many more resources as a solution for keeping more Ugandan families intact. She's also the mom of 13 girls and 2 boys, and the story of how God ordained their family is just truly incredible. But today, Katie and I are talking about her new book, Safe All Along, Trading Our Fears and Anxieties for God's Unshakable Peace. So we focus on her move back to the United States and how the crazy pace of the American lifestyle makes us feel pulled apart in so many different directions, and that contributes to anxiety. And then we talk about the importance of community when you feel lonely, and you really don't want to miss the end where Katie gives us some ways to support and love our missionary and overseas friends when they move back to the States. You're going to love our conversation. Hey, Katie, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Hey, I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, I kind of already told you right before we started that I had a whole different conversation planned for us today, and God kind of changed my heart, but I feel like there's so much that we could cover with your story and your book. And so you just have so much experience and insight and faith. And so I'm just thrilled to be talking with you today. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, before we get into our conversation and your new book, I want to talk about your family. You have a big family, a unique family. So can you tell us about your family and who's in it? And then I always ask to describe your family in a word or a phrase.
Okay. So my husband and I have been blessed to live overseas in Uganda for pretty much most of our married life, most of our parenting journey. And we had the privilege of adopting 13 Ugandan young women and girls. And so we have 13 daughters, and then we have 2 biological children. They are both boys. So we've got 13 daughters and 2 sons. And a lot of our children now are grown, and they go to college and they work, and one of them's married. And so we have a bonus son. So it's a big family. And we have a lot of fun together. Honestly, the first word that popped into my head when you asked me to describe our family in one word was loud, because we are loud. We have a lot of fun together. But I think just a phrase that popped into my mind right after that was God ordained. I think really only God can put together a family that looks like ours and knit our hearts together. And so it's, I don't think of it that way every day, because for us, it's just our normal, right? I mean, it's just, this is who we are. And it's been that way for so many years. But I do, when I take a step back, and really think about our family, I think like, wow, God, like only you could do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Those are 2 great words. Yeah, I like that. Okay, and then I also ask everyone, what is one thing that you want every parent to know?
Oh, that's a harder one. There are so many things that I have learned in parenting. And I think one thing that's been really on my heart so recently is just that I think presence is one of the most important things we do for our kids. There's going to be a lot that we get wrong and a lot that we get right. And probably like what feels right or what is the right thing or the right way to parent is going to change over the years and through different seasons and with different individual kids. But just like presence and strong relationship with them, I think is what's going to show them the character of God and what's going to be the thing that they go back to over and over again. I've just been so aware. The older I get and the more I kind of reflect on my own journey with God, the more aware I am of like, wow, as parents, we really are impacting the way that our kids view God as Father. And so I've just had that really at the forefront of my mind a lot recently of like, okay, the way I interact with my children now is impacting how they, even as adults and as parents themselves and as spouses and just people out in the world, the way that they are experiencing God as Father. And so, I just want to be a kind and loving presence in our home and in their lives.
Yeah, I really love that. And that's so true. And that's what makes parenting really hard sometimes too, right?
Yeah,
especially if you're someone who's like me, who I'm like, it's so easy for me to be distracted.
Yes.
And so sometimes I have to remind myself, like, I need to be present right now.
There's a lot of stuff that needs to get done. And it is for the benefit of your family. And so me too, I can get just really focused on what we need to do next and what needs to happen to keep everything running. And that is my responsibility as a parent. But I don't know. The older I get, the more convinced I am that my kids are not going to look back and say like, yeah, mom, she kept things going, or she always knew what was happening next. I hope that they have something better to say, that like, oh yeah, our mom, like she embodied Christ in this way, or she loved us in this way, or she was present in the moments that mattered,
Yeah, for sure. I think your story is so incredible. And if people want to hear more about it, I'll link your first book, Kisses from Katie, in the show notes so that people can find it. But for people who don't know your story and don't have your background that you're kind of mentioning right now, can you give us just like a brief summary about how you ended up in Uganda and then your time there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I moved to Uganda when I was 18 years old, originally thinking that I was going to take a gap year in between high school and college and volunteer at an orphanage there. And just pretty immediately was captivated by the people and the culture. Uganda is so beautiful. The people are so kind, so welcoming. And I just really fell in love. And long story short, I was working at this orphanage and really, really getting to know and love the children there. And I think as an American, I really thought naively that a child living in an orphanage didn't have any parents, like their parents had died or something. And what I came to find out is that in some places, I'm sure that that's the reality, but in East Africa specifically, about 80% of children living in institutional care have at least one living parent. And so a lot of the kids that I had really come to love and had built relationships with would talk about their mom or their dad or their grandmother, and they would go to visit those people. And so I just started asking a lot of questions and wondering like, okay, why do you live here? The orphanage I was at was about 120 kids with 7, 8, 9 staff at the max. And so there wasn't a lot of care to go around. And as it turns out, a lot of kids are living in institutional care just because of poverty. And that was really heartbreaking to me. And so I just started really organically helping pay. So part of the reason is because school is expensive in Uganda, and a lot of families cannot afford school, or maybe they can afford school for one child, but not all their children. A lot of the families in the community I was living in were farmers. They kind of grew the food that they needed to eat, and that's how they survived, but they didn't have like extra cash coming in. And so I just started paying for a couple children in the community to go to school. As a way to say like, hey, let's come alongside your families so that you can stay at home and be with your family. Yeah. And as I started telling my parents and my relatives and my friends back in the US, a lot of people were like, oh, I'd love to help you do that. I'd love to pay, this minimal amount of money in terms of just like the typical American lifestyle. I'd love to help do that. And so within the first year that I lived there, I was paying for about 40 children in our community to go to school, and decided to found a nonprofit and really just kind of make that my life's work. And so I founded a nonprofit called Amazima Ministries. Amazima means truth in the local language. And it was really my desire that these kids and their families would know the truth of who Jesus was, and know the truth that they were valuable and created in his image. And so trying to keep it in a nutshell, Amazima has grown and grown. We have 2 schools now. We have a team of about 300 staff members. They are incredible. They are running all our programs over in Uganda. And then over the course, so I lived in Uganda for about 15 years. We just moved back to the States unexpectedly about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. But over the course of that 15 years, I began fostering my daughters actually before I was married and had begun the process to adopt them. And then I met my husband in Uganda. He was over in the same community as I was doing mission work. And so we met and were friends for many years before we dated and got married. And then we had our 2 babies over there. And so that's kind of how God built our life and our family. And then, about a year and a half ago, we unexpectedly, we found ourselves in the United States on what we thought was just going to be kind of a short-term trip. And there were a lot of different factors that played into it. Some family members that had different health stuff. And then COVID lockdown had been a lot of unknown for several years at that point. But we ultimately, we didn't even really decide to move. We decided let's stay for 6 months, and then 6 months turned into a year. And now here we are a year and a half later and we're still here. So we still go back and forth to Uganda. We get to visit. I still work for Amazima. So it's been good. I feel like we kind of have a foot in both worlds at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And we're kind of going to talk about that in a second. But I think God continues to create such a beautiful story in your life. Hey guys, I know that as Christian parents, there are so many things that we want to teach our kids about God and His love for us. But leading your family in faith can be super overwhelming. Like, what are the most important things to teach? And where do we even begin? But I'm really excited to tell you about a great resource from Christian Parenting that will make teaching faith at home simple, engaging, and fun. Love God and Love Others is a 4-week family challenge that helps you teach your kids the greatest commandment of all time, which is to love God and love others. So each week, you'll focus on loving God with different aspects of who you are, and it all includes a few pages of a portion of the commandment to equip you for the week ahead, some scriptures and points of truth for your family to reflect on together, and fun challenges to try with your family. This resource is an amazing opportunity for your family to grow closer to each other and to God as you learn about His steadfast love for you and you learn to love Him with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So for more information and to get your copy, you can head over to cpgive.org. That's cpgive.org. Your new book, Safe All Along, is kind of a continuation of your story and goes a little deeper into your personal story of battling anxiety and finding God's peace. And I think I'm so excited to talk about this because I think it's a really important conversation. And there are so many people who battle with worry or anxiety. I have anxiety. I've been on medication. I've done the counseling. I've had the panic attacks. I'm doing better now. I'm off medication for now. But I get it. And I know you get it. And it's just really hard. And we also know that anxiety is on the rise in kids and teens. Mm-hmm. And so I just think it's really important to talk about this thing. And you do it with such grace. And so I appreciate your insight. But I want to talk, your anxiety started it got more when you moved back here, right? So you moved your whole big family from Uganda to the United States. Some people are really good at change. I'm not. I don't know to change well at all. So that's like a very big change. Also, most people aren't going to make a huge around the world move, but everyone goes through changes in their life, right? So tell us a little bit about that change, like what your family has observed or experienced and how it has impacted your anxiety.
Yeah, I would say that I was already experiencing kind of a low level of anxiety before the move, and even had kind of started writing this new book, Safe All Along, before that happened. But when we moved, it rose to the next level. I think I think I have very high expectations of myself, and I think our high expectations of ourselves can often fuel our anxiety because then we really feel like we're not meeting our own expectations, right? And I think I thought I moved across the world once before. This is my home country. I should be able to figure this out. And the reality is I had moved as a single, young person, super adaptable, right? And I had moved straight out of living with my parents. And so Uganda is essentially where I did all the things that you do early in adult life and where I learned to do everything that an adult knows how to do. I learned how to have my own bank account there. I learned how to, get the oil in my car changed and pay my bills and all these things, grocery shop, meal plan, all the things that you do as an adult. And then as a wife and then as a mother, I learned in this specific context. And so many of those things did not translate. And so we got to the US and I found that even though I'm from here, I did not know how to do a lot of things. And I was very used to, in our community in Uganda, I knew how to do the things. And even sometimes when new missionaries would move over to Uganda, I was kind of a person who could say like, oh, I'll show you how to do that. And I know how to figure this out and I'll help you navigate it. And then I showed up here and I had no clue how to do anything. And that was really anxiety provoking for me because as it turns out, I really like to be in control.
Don't we all?
I really like to be in control of myself and my life and my family and even my future. And I think part of it too was that we just didn't have a plan, right? And so people would ask like, are you going to go back? When are you going to go back? What are you guys going to do here? And we were just kind of like, we don't know. And we really both, my husband and I really felt God's confirmation that we were supposed to stay. We talked with our older kids about it. They felt like we were supposed to stay. And then a couple months in, we were all so miserable and so lonely. And so then you're going like, okay, God, did I hear that wrong? It was all the things. I think another thing that really fueled my anxiety was that the pace of life here is so much exponentially faster than the pace of life in our small town in Uganda. We just kind of moved on our own time. And so that was hard. It felt like I felt like I was always trying to keep up and almost always felt like I was not keeping up and drowning and not meeting those expectations.
Yeah. I think everyone feels that way when we have lived here our entire adult lives. I feel that way all the time. I'm never quite caught up on everything. So, because our culture is fast, we like to go, go, go. And I think about one thing in your book that you mentioned that this is one of my kind of favorite Greek word, is that you write that the Greek word for anxiety means to be divided or to be cut up. And I can feel that in your story because that means like our hearts are feeling divided when we feel anxious. Like you're in the States, but you want to be in Uganda, but you want to be where God has called you and you want to slow down, but you're stuck in this fast pace. And I'm sure that really added to all of this, and I think so many of us, like I said, feel that same way, even if we have lived here our entire lives. So what type of an encouragement would you say to someone who feels overwhelmed by this, who feels cut up in this fast-paced culture craziness that we live in? As a working mom, 2 of my goals for the new year are to take better care of myself and simplify. And one of the ways I'm doing that is with HelloFresh. There's a reason HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. They make it so simple. All I have to do is pick my meals and my delivery date, and all of the pre-portioned ingredients and step-by-step instructions come right to my door. That means less hassle, less wasted food, and they have health-forward options like over 30 calorie-smart and protein-smart recipes each week. The recipe cards are easy to follow and they're full of pictures, so it makes cooking with my kids really fun too. And we all know that when they are involved in the cooking, they're more likely to eat it, so everyone wins. We have a great deal for you right now because I know that mornings can be crazy as a parent. I often find myself forgetting breakfast or grabbing something really fast. But you can go to hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree and use the code CPPodcastFree for free breakfast for life. That's 1 breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree with the code CPPodcastFree.
Yeah, I think I was too, when I read that word means cut up and pulled apart. I was like,
it's so good. I feel
so
clear.
So pulled. in so many directions. And I feel like all of us, whether we've moved or not, we feel that we are being pulled in so many directions. And I was just so blessed to read that then the word that translates peace actually means wholeness. And I thought, oh my goodness, I am pulled apart and God wants to give me wholeness. He doesn't want us to be divided. He wants us to be whole. And so that's kind of the whole premise of my book, Safe All Along, is just my own journey on figuring out, okay, how do I live more whole, more grounded in God's peace? And I would definitely say a lot, I do not write this from the perspective of an expert. I am still very much figuring this out, but God has given me just little snippets of what this looks like and little practices that I have put in place. And I love that you shared earlier that you have taken medication and you have seen a counselor and you have done the things because that's part of my story too. And I don't think it has to be one or the other. I don't think it's supposed to be one or the other. And I don't ever want to put this book out into the world and say, here you go. Here's your fix all for your anxiety. These are a few of the pieces of the puzzle of what has worked for me. But medication and counseling has also been part of my story, they've also been tools that God has used in that. He's also given me some really specific practices. And there are 10 specific ones in the book that I have really tried to incorporate both into my own day and into my family's life. And sometimes we don't do them. And I can notice how when we're not doing the things that I've kind of already coached myself to do, I can notice how I just slowly start to feel more pulled apart. But it does feel like an uphill battle because our culture is kind of putting this pressure on us to say yes to everything and to do everything and to go. And there are so many good options for things that we could be involved in. And one thing that I've really had to learn, probably mostly since being back in the States, just with so many kids still in our home and all of them wanting to be involved in different aspects of the community, whether that's sports or a youth group or whatever different things they want to be involved in. Those things are so good. And we were like so desperate to meet people and have friends and plug in that I wanted to do all of them. But doing all of them, again, leaves us so pulled apart, so chopped up. So I feel like our family members are going in opposite directions. And so we really had to learn to be good at discerning our yeses and nos and saying no to some really, really good things so that we can make sure to prioritize the better things. I had to say no to something tonight that I really want to do, but we had our small group last night and we had a sporting event on Tuesday and I had time with girlfriends on Monday, which means it's day 4 of this week and we haven't had dinner together yet. And for me, that might not be a priority for everyone, but for me right now, dinner around this table is a priority for us. And so I had to say no to something tonight because we're going to have dinner together. I text my big kids and said, no things tonight. We're having dinner together. And so just, I think, kind of spending time with God, discerning, what do I want my family to be about? What do I want my life to be about? And are the different things that are pulling me in different directions, are they lining up with what I'm saying that my priorities are and what I'm saying I want our family to be about? And if they're not lining up, then we need to kind of reevaluate what we're saying yes and no to. Another piece of advice that I would give that seems so basic, but I need to be reminded of all the time is just that spending time with God in His Word, communicating with Him, in prayer with Him, it sometimes can feel like one more thing that we're doing, but it's actually the thing that we are doing that is going to keep us feeling whole and at rest and at peace for the rest of the day. It is the thing that is going to combat this feeling cut up and divided. And so my temptation is to say, with all these different things going on, I don't have the time to spend doing this. And in reality, there's always the time to spend doing this because this is going to be what fuels everything else that we do throughout the day. And so just making it a habit, making it a priority that I will get time with God in his word, conversing with him today, and that's going to bleed out into everything else that I have to do.
Yeah, that's so good. I struggle with that too, like making it fit into my day with my air quotes, right? Like that's not what we want to do. And I know in my head, I have the head knowledge, right? That, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I know God gives me peace. I know I trust God, but do I live like it? And I have to slow down and make it my heart knowledge too. And we do that with prayer and getting in God's word. But sometimes life gets busy and we don't prioritize it, and we should. So I like that encouragement. Yeah. Thank you. I kind of want to go. This is what I really had laid on my heart today, is talk about your family's adjustment to being in the States. I told you earlier, we recently visited our friends who live in Guatemala, and they've lived all over the world. Their kids were born all over the world. They raised their kids outside of U.S. culture. And we were in Guatemala with them. We were walking along the streets in Antigua, and my husband and I were kind of like rushing the kids along. We're like, hurry up, let's go faster, faster. And you're already laughing. And my friend looked at us and just so gently said, my girls have never lived in a place where anyone is telling them to hurry up. And it's just so different from where we live. And they moved back to the States for a while, and they really struggled to adjust to the fast-paced life, the consumer-driven, different culture here. And I know that people listening probably have missionaries that their church supports, or they have friends who are missionaries. And so I kind of just wanted to spend a moment with you, since you're living this right now, talking about what are the things that we can do as families to support families who have been overseas or who have been missionaries and are back in the States now, and they have these burdens and anxieties. Like, how can we support these families?
I'm really excited about that question because it's not something that we talk about a lot. And I think, just one thing that we felt when we moved here, we felt so lonely. And we had family that was nearby and they came around, but it just wasn't the same. I think because of our fast pace of life in the United States, we're very busy. And in Uganda, people just weren't so busy in the way that we are here. And we lived close together with a lot of our close friends, and they were just kind of in and out of our house all the time. And I remember saying to my husband when we'd been here just a few months, I say the thing all the time of like, just come over, just come over, just come over. But I'm starting to think that like, nobody's going to come over. And then we had these friends who, they weren't our friends yet. We met them at church. And I said, you should just come over sometime. And then they did. And I was like, and we didn't live close to the church that we'd started going to. So it was like, they drove like 30 minutes to just come over. And I was just so excited about it. It was a Tuesday. And then I said, well, do you want to come over every Tuesday? And they said, yes. And I was like, oh, you do? And that was like probably one of the best gifts of our early time here, is that they came over every Tuesday. And I'm not saying that all missionary families would love you to just drop by. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get an email and someone's going to be like, I don't want people to come to my house. But I think just availability. And again, just presence, reaching out to people and saying like, hey, could I come over and help you do your laundry? Hey, could I bring a meal and we eat it with you? Just little things. I felt so alone in my days, especially our kids were in school for the first time ever. And so sometimes it was just me and my two youngest, like at home at our house. And we would play and we would like do the dishes and do the laundry, do the whatever. But I had never done that by myself. I had always had people in and out of my home. And so even for just someone, my mom is awesome. She came over yesterday and was like, hey, I came to help you clean. And we just cleaned the house together. And it was great because I had a couple hours where I was going to tidy up the house anyway, but to do it with someone was so much better. I mean, and it's not even probably missionary families who need this, right? Like we all need this.
Yeah.
I have a friend who we joke about, like, we should just, we tease each other because we both let the laundry like pile up and pile up and pile up.
I could send you a picture of my laundry room, and it's embarrassing.
I sent her a picture last week because we were talking about it. So then I went in my room and snapped a pile of laundry that's like all over. I can get the laundry washed and dried.
I can do that all day long.
To fold it and put it away is like this whole other thing. So I sent her a picture and said, like, 2 adult people share this bedroom and we're just like here in our laundry. Anyway, I digress. But we had laughed because we try to see each other with our kids every Wednesday. And we were like, okay, on Wednesdays, we'll alternate whose house we go to and we'll just fold the laundry. And I think we just, as a missionary coming back to the United States, I felt so lonely and I just longed for anyone to be in my space and doing the things with me. And so I also didn't really know how to prepare a meal for my family. And that felt so overwhelming, which you would think would be different because like we have all the ingredients available to us that we never had overseas, but I had learned to use the ingredients that we had. So having people bring us meals was always a tremendous gift. But again, I feel like I didn't feel inconvenienced and it seemed like people thought they were inconveniencing me. And so they, drop it off and run. And so I think if you do have the ability to say like, hey, we're going to bring the food and we're going to eat it with you. It's really hard to make friends as an adult. I mean, anyone who's moved even from one town to another or anyone who's changed jobs knows that like you can come in and feel really like on the outside, like, okay, these people, they already have their friendships kind of established. They're not going to want me to be in their group. And so I think just the more you can invite people in, and we've been really blessed. We did find a church body and a few friends that did a really, really good job of just inviting us in to everyday life stuff. But that was honestly the biggest blessing, was just being connected with people and having them want to do just the regular everyday stuff with us.
So what I'm hearing a lot of you saying, I think, is that you came from one culture, you entered into another, and you were lonely, of course, because you have to make new friends and that's hard, but also homesick for that culture. And so the people that impacted you were the ones who listened to what you needed and followed through. Like you were saying, come over. And I think we do sometimes think, oh, I don't want to burden them. They're really busy. She's really busy. She's got like a whole village of children, like she doesn't have time for me or all these things. But people, when they ask for help or ask for something, they really mean it.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, my most life-giving times were when, yes, I am busy and I do have a ton of kids and I love for someone to be in it with me and experiencing it with me. And I love, anytime anyone would come over and just like sit on the couch with me, that was such a gift because it was a reminder like, okay, I'm not totally alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really encouraging. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your heart today. I just really appreciate it so much. I'm going to link everything in the show notes that people can find your books and connect with you. But I just really value your time and all of your insight. And so I'm just grateful to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's been such a blessing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think that this topic is so important because so many of us feel divided, cut up, and pulled in different directions, and that very rarely leaves us feeling at peace. But remember that anxiety may mean cut up or divided, but the word peace means wholeness. And God can give you wholeness when you open your heart to Him and follow Him. I have links to all of Katie's books, her social media, and her ministry website, so you can connect with her in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. May God bless you and your family this week. May you be comforted knowing that you can cast your anxieties on the Lord because He cares for you. Whatever makes you feel broken down and cut up, He in His loving goodness will make whole. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, you can do that now, and that way you won't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Instagram at @ChristianParenting_org and see more resources at ChristianParenting.org. And if you're a mom raising daughters, we have the perfect course for you. Visit cpguides.org to learn more about our Helping Moms Raise Confident Daughters online courses. And lastly, if you have enjoyed this podcast or other Christian parenting resources, please consider donating to this ministry. Visit ChristianParenting.org and click the donate button. Christian Parenting is 100% donor funded, and none of this would be possible without your help. We are so grateful for you. You're amazing. God bless you.